Okay. First of all, thank you everyone for coming along. That's quite low. As Sarah said, I'm Dr. Tosh Warwick. I'll put this caveat in from the very start. There's not loads about Scarborough on here, but it's part of a broader project and a part of, I suppose, a personal passion, but it's also spilled over now into an academic interest and something the university are quite keen on now. But I'll talk about that in a bit. Just whilst I'm just kind of doing the introductions, I'd also like to mention that Paul Towns here today with his artwork, and Paul and I are collaborating and have a very strong common passion for football grounds in the past and those that have been lost, and those stands and those memories and those people that have been at the epicenter of the lives of millions of people over the past 140 years. I'm going to have to keep moving back and forth because I don't have a clicker. So I'll fall eventually. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to give a bit of an overview of the project. I'm a Borough fan, but I'm not actually a Scarborough fan, I'm a Middlesbrough fan. I'm from a place called South Bank. Those who are aficionados of non-league football will be familiar with South Bank's Normanby Road ground, and I'll come on to some of the influences of that. I'm going to talk a bit about Ayresome Park as well, because my early football life, rather than being at South Bank, it was burnt out in the early 90s, was at Ayresome Park. That's where I went with my dad. That's where I went to the last league football match there. And that's what's really inspired my interest in football grounds. But Ayresome Park could quite easily be the athletics ground. It could quite easily be Bootham Crescent. It could quite easily be Old Trafford. It could quite easily be Highbury. It has all the same meanings and attachments, and some of the passion that's attached to football, I suppose. I'm going to bring in some of Simon Inglis's work as well, because Simon's work is incredible. It's the kind of go-to work on football grounds, lost and present. And then I'm going to reflect a bit on how I've come to start going on about football grounds. And that came about as a result of the 25th anniversary of the last game at Ayresome Park on the 30th of April 1995. And then I'm going to talk a bit about lost football grounds and terraces, the Facebook group, which has now over 400,000 members. Can we show hands who's a follower of that page? So there's a few, yeah. That's interesting, yeah. Because that page is quite a good indicator of why there's such an interest in lost footy grounds. And then, because we're in Yorkshire, and I've had some debates about whether Middlesbrough is part of Yorkshire or not, but we won't get into that. I'm going to talk about Yorkshire's lost and historic football grounds as well, and look at how the art of football's lived on, and how Paul's work and that of other artists has helped kind of keep this culture going. And obviously Paul will talk a bit about his own experience in West Yorkshire and his dad's experience, in fact. And then lastly, I'll do a plug for when the book comes out. All right. So this is South Bank's Normanby Road ground. The picture there is from 1970. It featured in one of my books on Middlesbrough in the 70s and 80s. And you'll see there it forms part of a strong, close-knit community. You see the houses around the ground. You see one of the conveyors, on the court conveyors in the background, very faint, but you can see them. And in the top left-hand corner, you'll see the match with Bishop Auckland, I think it is, and it's right next to the church on Normanby Road. And then you see the image on the bottom right-hand side of the ground. And I walk past this almost every day, going to Asda with my mum, going go on the market. I went there to see the Borough youth team play. I never saw South Bank play as far as I can remember. I was only 8 when it went to put. But this is a key part of South Bank's identity. It's a place associated with the likes of George Hardwick, Wolf Mannion, Harold Shepherdson. So this was a hotbed of football. It's when the North East was a real thriving part of that culture, which has probably declined a bit now. And with grounds being burned down, here in Scarborough, the vandalism that probably helped the council off, reinvesting into the athletics ground, McCain Stadium. That was very evident here in South Bank and also in the neighbouring Grangetown where the ICI ground was as well. But this is my background. This is what I encountered every day. These lost grounds, these football grounds. So that's South Bank. In the 90s, after it had been finally the main stand burned down, it was left to decay. South Bank's a very poor working class area. It's been in decline with steelworks closing down. Not going to get too political as well. Talk about that. But obviously, commemoration has been quite key, and I did a project about memories of Wolf Mannion. I'm sure you've all heard of Wolf Mannion, the England great. He scores a Great Britain against the rest of Europe. Wolf's widely regarded as being one of the greatest footballers of all time. And Wolf grew up on my street. We were born on the same street, and I met Wolf as a kid. When I was playing football, he must have been appalled at how bad I was. But Wolf's been remembered now in Golden Boy Green, which now occupies that site. Sadly, there's no football on that site, and it made me kind of think, what do you do with these places? So getting on to goodbye to Ayresome Park, and these photographs are from the last game in 1995, and the banners of goodbye Ayresome, hello Premiership. We're on the verge of going up to the top flight. Eric Paler, the Evening Gazette writer, he's quite a cultural icon for football fans in Teesside. There's lots of articles, there's special features, the whole 3-hour TV programme about the last game at Ayresome Park. Back in the day when you didn't have that kind of build up to these kind of things, you only had 25 minutes beforehand on the time TVs. So try to get this out. Right, that's nice. So Ayresome Park was the place that I grew up. It's where I went to my first game. Borough beat Sheffield United 6-0. Stuart just got the hat-trick. But off the back of the 25-year anniversary, it was in the middle of it was at the start of COVID, and we were all locked in our houses, or we couldn't do anything really in reality, so we had to do stuff digitally. So I worked with Middlesbrough Football Club on looking back on Ayresome Park, and we didn't really know what to do. We didn't know how to mark this occasion, and whether it was worth marking 25 years. I thought it was, so I wrote to the local papers. I did some features. We had some education resources developed for local school kids, and we also had a live, what do you call it, like a live stream, like it's a studiocast kind of thing, where you could watch the first match back, and this was broadcast on the Borough YouTube channel and on the website. And you see there the early years of Ayresome Park. We did some education stuff for kids, because I think these football grounds are just as important as museums, cathedrals, your churches, your civic buildings, your parks. These are at the absolute centre of community life, and I'll come on to why that is in a bit. But so that was our house in 2020. We got all the bunting out and the balloons and that, and my girlfriend at the time must have thought I was mad, but she married me in the end, so that was a good sign. So she obviously got to do that. And then we're going to out of Ayresome. You'll see Stuart Roy Clark's work now in the bottom right hand corner. It's almost exactly what I spent that last game at Ayresome Park, and we collated lots of artwork from nationally recognised artists, local artists. We approached artists like Paul to include some of their work in the Art of Ayresome exhibition, which is online. It got quite a lot of attention. We featured some original Archibald Leach plants. We featured some of the early caricatures of Fred Main, so far from the early 20th century. Scarborough's own Richard Piers Rayner, he lives here now, he's a Borough fan. Richard's work featured Sean Durkin's work. We had work on North Korea in 1966 at Ayresome Park when they won 1-0. We had people like Kate Noakes and her sculptures. We had Philip Meadows, a very popular artist in Teesside, and David Watson, who's exhibited at the National Football Museum in Manchester. So it's quite revealing to be able to share some of this material and, you know, to kind of find a way to tell the story of Ayresome Park. I'm sure you're all familiar with Harry Pearson, the football writer. Harry and Neville Davey come together and produce a trophy room to celebrate what's on the site, well, what Ayresome Park is, what it means to people, and you know what you do next to it. I know I'm babbling about the borough of it here, but this can apply to any ground. And what I want to ask you as part of this process, it's the first time I've spoken about this topic. I'm just kind of finding my way with it. I want to kind of learn what you think we should do. Is there anything that can be done here in Scarborough? What else can be done in York? What can be done over in Hull? And you know, is it worth doing? And is this of interest to people? Hopefully it is. But I'm going to play a clip from Neville Davey talking about Ayresome Park. Try not to do that. So what Neville talked about there was Ayresome Park being a... Is this better without the microphone? Can you all hear me without the microphone? Yeah. So I'll do that. So Neville talked a lot about the importance of Ayresome Park as a trophy. I think that's very important. And Simon Inglis too, in his free surveys of football grounds of Great Britain, talks about why these places, these spaces are important. He talks about the experience of visiting the football ground is inseparable from the game itself. Every ground provides a different atmosphere which colours one's entire appreciation of a match. Even when deprived of a game, the football ground's enthusiast will strain for a glimpse of floodlights from the window of his car or railway carriage. Thousands attend then football grounds every week, and despite falling gates, this is in the 1980s, when lots of hooliganism, following a couple of disasters as well. Football grounds are still better used than many other local places of entertainment or even worship. And I think the past 35 years has brought an unprecedented period of change. Football grounds being a sense of loss. I think that's driven a lot of interest in lost football grounds. Rod Sheard, who was the lead architect for the McAlpine Stadium in Yorkshire in Huddersfield, he talked about them being really important buildings in the public realm, enjoy the highest profile, millions of people a year at the football grounds. The television audience can propel that to tens of millions of people. And this isn't just Old Trafford, it's not just Highbury, it's not just Stamford Bridge. Here in Scarborough, when we had Chelsea visiting the FA Cup in 2004, is that right, 2004? When I think it was Terry scored early on, that was beamed into the houses, into the homes of tens of millions of people across the world. It was the main ITV stream. It was the main global syndicated stream for that day. So Scarborough was a global audience. The global audience were able to see them at Kane Stadium, which was quite incredible when you think about that kind of impact. And Simon Inglis in 2005, in his celebration of Archibald Leach, talked about why it is asked do they all look the same in modern football grounds. The complaint is revealing. It reminds us that supporters care very much about the appearance and character of their surroundings, that the experience of attending a football match remains inseparable from the stage on which it is set. But secondly, it suggests a longing for the grounds of yesteryear. And when I've been around the country interviewing people, I've been to Sunderland, I've been to Newcastle, Southampton, London, Plymouth, Exeter, Birmingham, Scarborough, York, Hull. People almost universally say the old grounds are better, but I think there's a danger there, this kind of rose-tinted idea of what the old football grounds are like, but there's certainly a value there, which I think is very important. And there's a historic appeal, and just to qualify some of those statements we talked about. Football grounds have very strong family associations, they have a key part of social life, the part of everyday ritual. I suspect a lot of people in the room have went to a football match even when they weren't that bothered about it, because it's what you do on a Saturday. Even if the team are doing rubbish, even if your mates aren't going, you drag yourself along because it's what you do. And I think that's true of any football fan of any club. Just to kind of qualify that statement about visitor attractions and how popular these grounds are, York City's cumulative attendance this season amounted to 127,975 people. In comparison, Clifford's Tower, one of the main tourist attractions in the town, in the city, they only got around about 50,000 more than what York City got over the course of the year. Hull City, 524,000 people over the course of the season compared to the Deep, 500,000. Scarborough Athletic had 45,000 cumulative attendance. Scarborough Castle, in comparison, only gets 72,700, not a great deal more. Leeds United, a team that I have no affection for whatsoever. Really horrifying, living in Leeds. You imagine I get a lot of abuse. Leeds United get 934,000 people through the gates this year, including the playoffs. Leeds City Museum, in comparison, gets 224,000 people through the door. And just to kind of get across, football is always there. During the First World War, Ayresome Park was used by the Gulf War women's team. The Mass Observation Online survey, they observe all this practice of going to the football, keeping morale going and so forth. And there's so much evidence out there which I still have to go through. But one of the things that has really emerged strongly is this Lost Football Grounds page, and it was set up one day before the 25th anniversary of Ayresome Park. And Neil Richardson, who was one of the leaders in setting this, I've said founder, but he's one of the leaders. He said we've got these ball stadium arenas lacking any soul, history or identity. Players roll around as if they're being shot after being clipped. That's always happened, by the way. Players are being paid exorbitant amounts of money. That too has always happened comparatively. And video technology, that for years I've said would change the entire fabric of the game. The list goes on and on. So there's lots of negativity, but this group, even though it has lots of flaws, it loses lots of direction, there's some bizarre stuff on there, it's brought together 400,000 people who have some loose common interest in football grounds, and I think that's got to be commended despite some of the challenges of that group. It's incredible. It shows that Lost Football Grounds mean a lot to people. And it was through this group that I thought, rather than just talking about Old Trafford, talking about Highbury, Wembley, White Hart Lane, to look at some of the grounds that aren't as spectacular in terms of their size, but just as important in terms of their meaning. And what I've done here, I've clipped a few of the examples from Scarborough. Some of you might even recognise yourself. And these, when they talk about the past and the present, so you have there the cowshed, and the comparison there with the Flamingo Land Stadium, the Flagstaff. And it shows that there's a constant kind of process ongoing where people are thinking about that lost ground, how it compares to the constant narrative of, yearning for yesteryear, this kind of nostalgia. How many Scarborough fans have we got in the room? That's good. Yeah, that's great. How many Borough fans have we got in the room? Middlesbrough? No. There we go. Any Leeds fans in the room? Sorry for offending you. But again, here, this image from 1987. These aren't just pictures of football grounds, not just, oh, there's a match going on, that's it. These are a whole window to a different world. The fashions of people, the class of people, the technology, the companies that are advertisers pre-McCain Stadium days. I think this was during the promotion season, if I remember rightly. But you see this kind of appetite, it helps you spell as well some of these myths that have emerged, you know, people going about Hull not being a football city. It is, and I'll show you why it is in a little while, but it's about the built environment as well. Academically, I work in urban studies now, even though I'm a historian, and they're very keen for us to look at, you know, what's it's got to do with the real world, what's it's got to do with, you know, meanings and how you might use this to kind of attract people to, you know, to cultural events. You know, tonight in the library, even though I've had some tech issues and so on, even though I don't talk about Scarborough enough, we've got about 50 odd people here tonight. That's incredible. You know, I did not expect that whatsoever. I thought it'd be maybe it's me and Paul sat here and, you know, one of the librarians at the back. But it shows us an appetite. And there's also kind of a passion and I suppose a frustration, I think, and a yearning for memories of Scarborough's old athletic ground or McCain Stadium, whichever one you want to call it. But these photos have been shared, and I don't think they would be seen if it wasn't for Facebook and so on. You know, it provides a window to, you know, a lost world, a great little ground, Spencer Fisher says. Some memorable FA Cup games played there, not to mention the infamous league fixture against Wolves in 1987, obviously we don't have it. A little supermarket now stands on the old site, and these supermarkets are everywhere. Every time I go to an old ground, you have these boring, generic supermarkets that are there, and you know, they tend to gravitate towards football grounds, which I suppose makes sense. So obviously Scarborough FC, just a very brief overview. They actually played under electric light. Not many clubs, not any clubs as far as I'm aware actually, started their life as a football club, even though it's rugby rules, playing under electric light, but in Scarborough that was the case. They played at the cricket grounds, they played under rugby football rules, and there were two games between Hull and York back in 1879. The first football match was 1880 Football Association football, and that was a 2-1 win over Bridlington. In 1886, there was Cup Glory, and this was played out on North Marine Road on a school ground after they couldn't have use of the cricket ground and a nearby sporting venue. So what happened was, does everyone remember when Scotland were due to play, was it Estonia where they kicked off and the team didn't turn up? Basically, that's how Scarborough won the East Riding Challenge Cup. The other team refused to travel. Hull Town refused to travel. They said, we're not playing, we're not happy with the pitch. The local press obviously got behind Scarborough. They said that the FA had agreed to this and, you know, you should play there. So they actually kicked off the game, kicked the ball in the goal just so they could kind of score that token winning goal. The first leg of the tie, Hull was drawn for each. And that's how Scarborough won their first cup upon North Marine Road against no opposition. So that's a little quirk of the different grounds to play at. But it also shows the importance of having a proper ground as well. You know, the fact that you're moving around these different locations, and Hull Town weren't happy about being cast out onto this football pitch where anything could happen on the school pitch. So they moved to the athletic ground, and you know, this was really controversial at the time. Today, when clubs move ground, people whinge about, you know, why are we moving there? It's not part of the city, and it's too far out. It's part of an industrial park or a retail park on the outskirts of York or whatever. Not picking on you there, John. And exactly the same happened in the case of Scarborough. A number of supporters favoured a move to Manor Road rather than Seymour Road, but the corporation and the landowners said you move into Seymour Road, and that's how that came about. The first game was 1898 against Loftus, obviously up from East Cleveland. That was a 1-1 draw, and the Cleveland Cup was a big deal. But the club experiences all kinds of difficulties in this early period, and they buy the ground at the back of the after leasing it for 14 years. They have troubles in the post-war area. They have major financial problems, and the corporation intervenes in the 1920s, 1923. But you see there the early snapshots of the athletic ground as it was. You see the gas holder shortly before it was demolished. Jumping forward to the league years, and my least favourite borough manager ever, Neil Warwick. The McCain Stadium and this idea about the McCain and the theatre of chips, I think that's really cheap, I think it's really cheeky. But the sponsorships there's a recognition that there's actually a drive, and a local frozen food company want to get behind it. So when Richmond, the club chairman, is preparing for the 1989 season back in the Football League, you know, they have this agreement to be in the McCain Stadium, and this is national news because this isn't heard of. You know, it's not something that you see like you do now, where every ground has a sponsor. You know, this was really, really unusual. It captured the imagination. It was in newspapers in America talking about the McCain Stadium here in Scarborough. Obviously, I'm not going to go into the heartbreak of, you know, Scarborough losing their league status and that Jimmy Glasgow, because I'll get lynched before I leave Scarborough tonight. But importantly, the decline of Scarborough in 2007 and the eventual demolition. And Paul and I were talking about this earlier. You know, this kind of, what do you do when there's a derelict ground and the club's folded? What happens next? And obviously there were calls to return to the ground. There's calls for the council to intervene. Sadly, none of those happened. Instead, the local authority said they'd invest in alternative provision. But I think these snapshots here, again from those football grounds, they show the different, you know, that vast contrast between a home of football to this decaying ground, even though we had a relatively new stand at the time. I'm going to try and show some footage, hopefully it will work, of the ground in those last days. I think it might be an exclusive on here, so please ignore that. We just get a sense that dereliction, that loss, you know, this wouldn't be allowed to happen to a museum, to a church, to a, you know, to a theatre. You know, there'd be more stringent calls for interventions, you know. You know, but you see instead this decay, I know people have been upset by this video, they've been kind of, you know, what a shame, what a waste, and, you know, how did it get to this point? You know, you'll know McCain is removed from the hoardings as well by that point. You don't want that shame here of the abandoned ground. But I think it's quite sad, it shows how quickly, you know, no matter a couple of years, how somewhere that was the epicentre of sporting life in the town is left to rot like that, and the club are kind of, you know, pushed out from the town now, and it's over to break. But obviously now you've had this recovery, you've had this rebirth through Scarborough Athletic, and I managed to get along to the site of the old stadium along Stadium Lane, and you know, does anyone live on Stadium Lane? No. So it's one of these kind of generic housing estates that every old football ground has on it. There's kind of these little nods to the ground, and not a lot in Scarborough's case. As far as I could find, it was just naming convention street names. But I was pleased to kind of visit the new ground and, you know, see that kind of recovery, I suppose. Moving rapidly around Yorkshire, so I've not got a lot of time. Many Yorkshire football clubs, including Scarborough, had their origins in cricket clubs. They either use them as their homes, you know, so they both use the same space. They might parent a local rugby team, or they'd have it as part of their move before they already they shift to new grounds. So before they have their own established grounds. Bramall Lane famously was one of these grounds. Here you see some of the the different stages of Bramall Lane. So you see the interventions here, putting terraces in to accommodate football fans as well as those who want to go and watch cricket in Steel City. And you also see how sometimes grounds are disrupted unexpectedly, and a number of football grounds were bombed during the Second World War. Bramall Lane being one of them, and these images from the Sheffield Star, quite spectacular. They show the devastation that was caused at Bramall Lane by Second World War bombing in 1940, the Blitz of Sheffield. Also, the city was a major target, being a major steel manufacturer. But you also see there this kind of juxtaposition of this football match going on. I think the centre forward there for Leeds is Alan Peacock, but I'm not quite sure. I think it's Alan. And you see there Sheffield United beat 3-1, I think it was, 1963. But then you had these changes. There's a shift away from being a cricket ground to a home of football. The Bramall Lane is demolished. We have a new centre put in the 1960s. 1974, 1975, we have the entire reconfiguration of the ground. So you have a new stand built in front of the cricket pavilion. So you lose Bramall Lane as a cricket ground, but you gain a more conventional football ground where it's more tightly packed in, more what you'd expect from a standard 1970s ground. Alderton or Hillsborough, Sheffield Wednesday. Obviously Hillsborough is well known for the Hillsborough disaster, and I'll come on to that in a bit. But there's been warnings from history, and I think delving into the archives and stories of lost grounds, or at least these grounds that have been changed beyond all recognition. So Alderton Stadium became Hillsborough in 1914 after Archibald Leach and doing some interventions for the new ground. They actually moved the main stand from Olive Grove, the old Sheffield Wednesday ground, or Wednesday's ground, to Hillsborough. But there's a disaster in 1914 and one of the retaining walls collapsed during a cup tie with Wolves. And you see the image there featured in the entry Archie book by Simon Inglis, and it talks about the lead up to trouble and this kind of blame towards fans, saying the swaying of people was very pronounced. As previous football incidents of a similar character have been caused by swaying their assembly calls for alarm. So there's a lot of blame here, not on Archibald Leach, not on the stadium builders, but on the fans. So the fans get the blame even back in 1914 against Wolves, and this happened several times. Most famously, the Ibrox disaster. Obviously, they were of Archibald Leach's grounds. But there's incidences almost every week. In this given incident, saw the Wolves goalkeeper faint because he thought they saw a corpse on the ground. This is something new. Also, the Hillsborough disaster in 1989, it claimed 97 lives, now the amended figure, after fans were crushed in the Lepping Lane end. The terraces were converted, one of the first grounds to do that intervention. Seating in the barricades, replaced the fences, and obviously putting people in. Nevertheless, this ground has kind of had at least had a semi-renaissance in 1996, Euro 96, and it was this ground where David Suka scored one of the greatest goals of European Euro Championship history when he lobbed Peter Schmeichel to make a 3-0 to Croatia against Denmark. And Simon Inglis argues that by using this ground in Euro 96, it was part of consolidating it being one of England's prime football grounds. And also you have the memorial there. You still have the Archibald Leach stand, even though it's hugely changed for the 1966 World Cup, as Ayrton Park and Roker Park were as well. And also you still got the clock, which was relocated from the Olive Grove and the reinvented finial as well, and the memorial there, the tragedy. Ellen Road, John Howard's book on Ellen Road is fantastic. I could spend about a week giving lectures about Ellen Road and what it's been like over different times, but I'm just going to summarise it very quickly. It was the old Peacock ground. You're all familiar with the Peacock pub over the road from Leeds Next ground. 1878, the land was brought by that brewery. 1883 is part of the company's sports ground. Leeds Woodville amateur side play at the ground. By the turn of the century, it's Elland Road because it's the main stand was built along Elland Road. And then Leeds City were formed in 1904, and by Elland Road of Holbeck Rugby Club. Leeds City formed 1919, Leeds United come into being. But one of the things that probably goes under the radar is not the ground being transformed in the 1970s off the back of Don Revy's success, obviously from Middlesbrough, Don Revy, great rival of Brian Clough, who was from the borough as well. It's not the 1994 all-senior conversion of the main stand there. It's in 1956 is what had a real catastrophic impact on Leeds United, because that stand was also home on the West Stand. It set on fire overnight. They were doing quite well. They returned to the top flight. They were, they had a decent run. They actually won the game against Villa after that 1-0. After the stand had burned down in the middle of the Wednesday night, the local chip shop owner ran out of his dressing gown, apparently trying to intervene and get the fire service to save it. Within an hour, that stand had just burnt, gone. Unfortunately, a lot of the club's archives, all the medical facilities, kits, a lot was in that stand, so it all went up. So it's very hard to write any history of Leeds United before 1956 as a result of that fire. One of the questions that was part of the project is, when the ground's changed so much, like Leeds United has that been lost? It's on the same spot, but is it still the same ground? Do you consider that a lost ground? Very little remains of it. Hull City, I went along with their club, well, their historian Nick, and Nick showed me some of the sites of the old ground, and it raised some questions about what do you do with those football grounds, what's the point in them? And the Anlaby Road ground that was on the site, just over the way from the new ground, the KC ground, it's actually still under all that shrubbery, those waste mounds and so on. So there's now a campaign to rediscover that ground and expose the terracing. So the terracing still remains to 80% here. And that can be the plans now, and obviously the whole supporters trust, I think it is to uncover that and make a feature of it. When you walk to the new ground, you can actually see the old ground. I think that's quite a nice touch. When they've done that elsewhere, one of the examples is the veg field in Swansea. You see people going along and they take quite a keen interest in it. It has a bit of pertinence, a bit of historical relevance. And also, we've left a broader trend towards doing a bit of archaeology on football grounds. And again, going through the archive, Boothry Park, Hull are always called to for not being a football city. It's incredible there, those 40,000 cars parked outside Boothry Park trying to get tickets for the cup tie with Manchester United in 1949. Hull lost 1-0. But there's a whole vein of archival material in the Hull History Centre and also on social media, and it changes your perspective. I think for me, it gives you a totally different insight into what lost football grounds are like, how football worked in those days. So I thought it was quite a nice piece. And then when you go to Boothry Park now, so basically my story is what I tend to do when I go to Borough away games, or so either before the game or when I'm really badly hungover the following day, I'll stay overnight and I go to all the old grounds, the sites of the old grounds, and take photographs and see what's there and see if it means anything to people, or they're just kind of forgotten about it. And at Boothry Park, they have these naming conventions, so they built a special train halt at Boothry Park to serve the football ground. So that's remembered there by Boothry Park Halt. There's no halt there anymore. They also have these metal boxes talking about a magical place, especially at night. We made an abundance of memories here, a second home. I'll never forget the noise and the smell. So you have these sculptures at various grounds. We have these at Esther Park, marking the site where Pat Dewick scored his goal in 1966. But it's quite interesting to revisit some of these sites. The emotions we felt, the joy and the tears. And then Bootham Crescent. And Bootham Crescent is one of the best examples of heritage stepping up and showing the value of of lots of football grounds, and historic England have been really big on this. I'll come on to that in a second. I had wonderful times at Bootham Crescent. I went there for a pre-season friendly. I was lucky to have a few drinks after the game with John up in the audience there. But it's a fantastic ground. It was a proper ground. It was proper terracing. You know, you could switch ends at half time. That's right, isn't it, John, going on that? You know, they actually got converted from the group club again to a football ground. We've got some Paul's work there. I'm sorry, Arsenal. Arsenal game, yeah. And as with many stadiums of the early 20th century, parts of the old ground from Fulford Gate moved to Bootham Crescent to be part of the new ground as well, and it was repurposed. But what's really interesting about Bootham Crescent is the intervention by Historic England. And what they did, Jason Wood, the archaeologist, he used the test case, following on some work at Bradford Park Avenue, but I'm going to let Paul talk about Bradford Park Avenue instead of me. But what they did, they had archaeological digs, they recorded memories, they had people digging out the line markings on the ground. It was on TV, on radio, academic publications, it was all over. And there's also a video produced by Historic England, and I want to show you a clip of it because it shows why lots of football grounds are important. And hopefully it will work.
Our focus has been not just about capturing people's memories of Bootham Crescent.
So this is the Historic England project, capturing memories of Bootham Crescent.
Since Historic England began this series of films over 2 years ago, our focus has been not just about capturing people's memories of Bootham Crescent, but also how to shape and drive the redevelopment of the site to best reflect those memories and create a new and distinctive place with real character. As we begin 2021 with York City having played its last game at Bootham Crescent, this seventh film describes the legacy plans to memorialise the stadium within the proposed housing scheme. After consultation with the club, fans, residents, local politicians and the planning authority, it became clear that there was a strong desire for retaining a tangible part of the stadium, somewhere people could focus their memories, somewhere they could orientate themselves after the stadium had gone, and somewhere they could continue to pay their respects. The challenge to create this lasting legacy and focal point for memory and orientation demanded us to think sensitively and imaginatively, and to improve on earlier redevelopments of other football grounds by doing far more than simply naming streets after famous players or laying a plaque on the centre spot. Working with the club and the developers, Pacific Homes, the legacy plans are now in the process of being designed. The main feature will be the retention of a short section of the popular Stanford Terrace and the tunnel beneath. A unique survival, the tunnel once permitted rival fans to switch ends at half time. It was also used as an air raid shelter during World War II, which adds to it a further layer of meaning and significance. The tunnel has been disused for some time, but still bears witness to the friendly rivalry between York City and Bradford Park Avenue.
In that era, it was unfortunate there was getting quite a few incidents where fans got involved with each other, I'd say. I was always one that was on the periphery, I was never involved. So as we were changing ends in the tunnel at that particular point, as how the Bradford fans were going towards one end and the York fans were going towards the other, there was a big clash in the middle. I can remember saying lots of good punches being thrown, but I was at the back of it. But the next thing I heard was this big scream and laughter from all around. And a chap came absolutely running past me, a big chap, massive chap. I looked down and he was completely bald. And one of our fans was holding a toothpick up and shouting, "Look what I've got! Look what I've got!" Shout.
The time I've ever had any problem at a football game is not maybe not seeing that
some away, I couldn't tell you who it was, put me in the stomach and in the scar, nicest person to tears. So that's another memory from the top of Good Crescent.
The retained section of the popular stand will be as close to the halfway line as possible. The roof and some seats will be removed, the sides underbuilt, the terrace perimeter secured with metal fencing, and the tunnel ends gated, all using reclaimed material from the stand. The terrace will be flanked by a memorial garden, bordered by part of the wooden fence from in front of the stand. The garden will provide a home for existing memorials, caskets, and ashes, subject to families' wishes, and possible future interments. The marking out of the centre circle within the planned public open space will align with the section of terrace and provide a further place for orientation. How the circle is marked is still to be decided, though we might draw inspiration from these examples. As John Lacey reminds us, a unique tradition at the ground was the lowering of the club flag to signal that there were 5 minutes to go before the end of the match.
Flag was in the, looking at it from the box stand, it was more or less in the corner of the road, and I was the York City flag, special flag, club flag, and it came down 5 minutes before the end of the game.
As part of the legacy plans, a new flagpole will be erected.
I'm going to continue because we've been at time otherwise. Has much of that actually happened as yet? It's not been back to the ground yet. Does anyone know if it's happened yet?
It's plans of pancake, it was earlier in the week, yeah, it's, the flagpole that's going to go, I actually supplied them with a replica flag, so that's somewhere about the business what it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
But they are going to leave out the stand there, and at the moment, exception they do streets and the things.
I've been meaning to get across, but it's not time yet.
Yeah.
So what you do with all football grounds, what you do is you take your 3-month-old daughter to an old football ground. In Rotherham, you take her to Millmiller, and Abigail there, she'll start crying about 10 seconds after that. But Millmiller was the abandoned ground of Rotherham United, and it's obviously, I'm not going to get into the politics of it, but Rotherham left after they couldn't agree an extension of their tenancy when Booth bought the ground. CF Booth obviously being next door. It's still largely unused, but now football's returned, and I went in February, March, and I got a tour of the ground, and they showed us around and talked about the plans and how they're going to renovate the Derek Dalton clock from behind the goal, and it was amazing to go and see that ground, and you see it being reused. I know there's all kinds of bad feeling about what happened to that ground, and it's contentious, and there's, you can see the new ground over the way when you sat behind the goal. But it's fascinating just to see, that there's no way in this world that junior football game that I went to would get hundreds of people there on a Sunday morning if it wasn't that Millmiller. So I thought that was brilliant to be able to go there. Valley Parade, obviously we had the disaster in Valley Parade, the fire, the anniversary was last week, wasn't it? I didn't want to show pictures of the Bradford fire, there's no need to, but I just want to reflect a bit on how that's been remembered, and obviously you had the partly controversial play about what happened at Bradford and the Remy in the 56, those 54 Bradford fans and those 2 Lincoln fans. And how do you remember football grounds, and obviously Valley Parade is extensively remodelled. How do you remember these tragedies? How do we kind of deal with these contentious histories? Bradford Park Avenue, already in existence but had lots of interventions as a result of Archibald Leach from 1907. That's Paul's favourite stand, I believe. It's a wonderful example of the Archibald Leach architecture, that kind of distinct identity. Tragically pulled down in 1908, I think it was. But again, Jason Wood, who I mentioned, Neville Gaby, involved S. Park, David Pendleton on the heritage research on this side. They have the Breaking Ground archaeological dig, and I wrote a review of the book, Breaking Ground, and I can't find a copy of it anywhere. I've lost my book. And so if anyone's got a copy of Breaking Ground they don't want, give me a shout. I can't get it online, tried all sorts. And that book really inspired me to kind of delve a bit more into these lost grounds and people sharing their Polaroids, stories of fans shotting on a nappy, a diaper clip. The goalkeeper using it to keep the shorts, apparently. They found that when they've done the archaeological dig, rediscovering and reclaiming those terraces. There was a award-winning project. The book was amazing when I had it, but it captures the imagination. We're sort of too disheartened. I want to hand over to Paul now because Paul's going to talk a little bit about his work that's on show here, and how football's inspired him, and how art continues to play an important role in bringing lots of lost football grounds, lost events, and perhaps even rekindling some old memories back to life. I'm going to put some of Paul's work on the screen there, but over to you, Paul. Tell us more about your work.
Yeah, this image you see there is, I painted that, only finished it last week. It's actually of a flying header, as you can see, in front of the actual leach cell. And the guy who scored the flying header is actually my dad. He scored it in a trials match in 1965-66 season, apparently. He's no memories of who he was against, he just remembers the black and white stripes and the ball flying into the back of the net. Apparently the club wanted to sign him, and he, with him being a Bradford City fan, he trotted up the old Doll's House steps and out of the ground and couldn't get away fast enough. He just said, no, I'm not signing. So that was the end of my dad's football career as a professional. I was born at St Louis Hospital, which is literally a stone's throw from the old ground. And in 1980, the summer of 1980, I don't know what made me do this, but I wanted to have a look inside the ground, and I knew there was a little red gate at the side, and it had a little gap in the bottom because I used to go up there and look from the outside quite regular. And me and my pal at the time, we kicked the gate in and we got inside. And the scene that was in front of me was like vegetation up here, terraces, crushed barriers, literally a view of the stand, pretty much what you can see there. And that sort of opened the floodgates for my interest in lost football stadiums. And at 10-year-old, you wouldn't think that would be quite normal for a child to be sort of engaged in that sort of thing. But for me, it was. Surrounded by art within my family from being born, basically. My grandma was an artist, my mum an artist too. She wanted to be a plan drawer for British Telecom. So I was surrounded by the world of drawing boards, pens, paper, pencils. And being taken to away games with my dad, I used to come home after the game and sketch the stadiums of what I'd seen. I don't know if I got some form of photographic memory because it was before publications like Simon Inglis had brought out pictures of football grounds, but I sort of drew them the best I could. And this thing that ignited a sort of a childlike hobby. On leaving school, I ended up working in construction, management, running my own business, and in latter life teaching at Bradford College and University. Further to that, I sort of found that I'd had enough and I really wanted to follow my passion with art. So 12 years ago, I started painting. And literally that's what happened. I just started painting football stadiums. My hobby, it seemed the most natural thing to do. And it just evolved. I think that, like, obviously this evening, you guys here tonight, 50 odd people just at a talk, it shows the flavour and the passion behind football and the lost stadiums. So the gravitas behind that, my hobby the power of social media seemed to take hold quite quickly. Obviously, a lot of hard work's gone in over 10 years, 12 years to hit the levels we're doing now. So we're working at various clubs, mainly in Scotland, you wouldn't believe it. The passion for lost football grounds and football history in Scotland seems to have a real sort of, I don't know, how would you put it? If you find it, I don't know what it is. It just seemed to, like the national team, they're really passionate about it. Oh, what a crap. Yeah, so I mean, I don't want to rattle on too much, but there's just a few examples of the work, the oil paintings. There's a Vsauce in the middle, so if anyone wants to buy a Vsauce tonight, quite welcome. But on the first portrait is of a guy called Seamus O'Connell, played for Bishop Auckland. I've actually painted him twice over the last 2 months, 2 commissions. The next one, the Tosh Aberdeen private commission, which is going to Scotland in a couple of weeks. Tiger Road, which is just something to show, and the old Ewood Park, Blackburn Rovers. That was a chap I'd done a painting a few years ago, and he liked the look of what I'd done. So he approached me to do a commission of well, I did two for him actually. One of where he studied within the ground, and then the 1966 Wembley vision, which is just a vision from my mind's eye, basically. The players coming out in the stadium as what it would have looked like. A lot of my paintings are done literally from the way I see things. You can use photographs for reference, but I like to put my own slant on the painting, so that's basically how it works. Okay, thank you.
Right, okay, before we finish, because I know Sarah will go mad if we run out of time. Shameless plug, the book's been in the pipeline for ages, having a baby, getting married and all that, carry on. That's got in the way of me finishing the book. It'll be out next year, but if anyone's interested, do check it out online. We've been lost football grounds and tennis in the United Kingdom. It's aligned with the Facebook group. And hopefully that should be quite popular, and it'll get people talking about lost grounds. And there's loads of books like this already out there. So there's a lost book from the 1980s, which is a fantastic collection of terrace life, and there's Mike Float's work on early 20th century football grounds, and just been speaking or sending emails to Mike today. But basically what I'm here for, Mr. Bible, the whole motivation is to hear from you. I want to hear your histories, any archives that you have that might be of interest to me, any photographs you have. I don't want this book to have loads of generic, photographs in that everyone's already seen. It's pointless. You can go on Google and find them. I think if we can use this book as a mechanism to share some of those Polaroids that you might have, a picture of going to match with your dad, that one of 3 photos you have with your dad of the 1950s. I also want to interview people. Football fans are like, oh no, I don't want to do that. You end up getting loads of cultural and archetypes like football, and loads of like kind of people who, perhaps don't kind of love football, they kind of get away with this stuff. So I've been interviewing fans from Sunderland to Southampton, over Swansea, been up to Hampton Park. But I want to hear the voice of fans, their memories, their everyday stories, those quirky stories about the grounds you went to, because they're not in the history books. Even though we assume everyone knows your stories, or everyone used to do that, they're not in the books. It's impossible for me. I've been reading the 2 Scarborough books that I wrote from here. They're brilliant books, but a lot of the stories aren't there because there wasn't a lot of dedication towards memories. The books are brilliant, but they don't have that focus on the memories and that everyday supportive experiences that they're about the club. And I also, academically as well, so the university don't whinge at me. I also want to understand what the meanings are around old football grounds. What emotions do you have? Are they, how do you feel about them getting knocked down, or a stand disappearing, or what's the feel like when you go back there? Do you go back there? Nick, who's the whole historian, Nick drove me to the old ground. He said he'd never been back before, so he never felt the urge to go back, even though he writes all the books, all the best books on Hull City, so he doesn't go back, which I found bizarre, why would you go back? So if anyone wants to get in touch with me, my email address is on there, my mobile number's on there as well. I'm about after this very briefly. If anyone's got any questions, give us a shout. But thank you so much for coming, because it's convincing that people are actually interested in this stuff. It's not just me and Paul who are like going ahead and saying it's good, So thank you so much for coming, and sorry about the technical issues, and any questions feel free to ask, but cheers for coming. Any questions?